Are you curious about how partnership publishing actually works? Today we're going behind the scenes with the publisher and editorial director of Cookbook Studio to find out. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for writers, readers, and cooks. I am Molly Stevens, and today I'm here with my co-host Kate Leahy. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Molly.
Have you ever thought about going it your own, like publishing without a big publisher?
I haven't thought about it personally, but I do think it could make sense for a lot of people. And here's why. I mean, the economics of publishing a cookbook, it's tough no matter how you look at it.
Right.
So if you get a cookbook deal with a traditional publisher, chances are you will still have to pay for the photography one way or another, whether the payment comes out of the advance that you will then have to earn out, or you just have to pay for the photography and send it to the publisher as part of your cookbook agreement. And then your advance, whatever the number is paid out in 2, 3, 4, 5 installments, depending on the deal. So you're still going to have to outlay cash to make this book happen.
Absolutely.
To just even cover your ingredient costs, unless you are getting a blockbuster cookbook deal, which, are few and far between.
Yeah. And I also think, say you're a first-time author or somebody, without a big platform, and you get a book deal, one, your advance will be small. So it's not going to even begin to cover at the expense of time and money creating the book. But you might also not get the attention of the top editor or the top designer. You might feel like, we talked to one author who talked about being high touch. Like if you really want to be involved, I've talked to many first-time authors and they're like, I just didn't feel like I had any say. I couldn't get input. If you want a more collaborative experience, maybe one of the big publishers isn't the way to go.
Right, especially if you really want to learn as you go. Mm-hmm. Of course, you're always going to be learning as you go, but this is the case where if you have a really great idea, going back to, I think it's, episode 2?
Yeah.
When Molly, you spoke with Rika Alanik of David Black Agency, and she said, she looks for these 3 qualities in a potential client: idea, voice, platform. And she said you need at least 2 out of the 3. I would say probably with a big flashy cookbook deal, you need 3 out of the 3 these days. But if you have 2 out of the 3 and you want to bet on yourself and you want to put the money up front, maybe you use a different publishing model to get the job done.
Right. And so a couple of our guests over the years have gone with Cookbook Studio, which is a partnership publishing company that's only been around for about 6 years. We've spoken to the authors, but we wanted to go really behind the scenes and find out how does it work.
These are books like Heartland Masala, that was episode 148, The Vegetarian Reset, way back in episode 56. I know we've also mentioned 52 Shabbats, Faith Kramer's book, and then a book called 20 Amici, 40 Ricetti. I think we mentioned that in the past as well. When I've seen these books, and I've seen them in a lot of places,
right.
They look beautiful. They really do stand out.
We're really excited because Engel, who is the founder, publisher, and CEO, she's previously worked in traditional publishing, and she'll tell us about that. And then the editorial director at Collective is Amy Treadwell, who also has decades and decades of experience.
We're looking at publishing through a different lens today, so I'm excited for this.
Yeah, let's bring them on. Well, Angela and Amy, welcome to Everything Cookbooks.
Glad to be here.
We are so excited to have you here. It's really a rare opportunity, and I think our first time we've spoken to a publisher and editorial director together and at a partnership press. So there's a lot we want to get into. So before we talk about the nuts and bolts of how it works, Angela, what made you want to create a company with this structure versus sticking with traditional publishing?
Well, Molly, that is a huge question. My background, 25 years in publishing, and I started at Publishers Group West, which had a lot of indie presses from North Atlantic to Grove, Red Wheel Weiser, which was Canary Press. And there was just so many small indie presses, and how structures and contracts were built, there was actually always a little bit what they would call hybrid, right? Like, hey, we can't give you this big advance, but we can do all these other things. Or is there a buyback in their contracts? Like, it was already kind of part of an independent press culture to try to get some good books. And then I moved to 10 Speed Press, which very well known in cookbooks. And I noticed that was actually what Phil Wood, some of the model was that he was doing with like the Stinking Rose cookbook, which I worked on, where, there's a huge buyback, or they come with all the photography. The restaurant was paying for lots of the cookbook to be done. Then I moved to Chronicle Books, where I met Amy, and Chronicle was actually doing the same thing. I think of Top Chef Cookbook, Amy, where there was this big buyback in the contract.
For people who are unclear on what the term buyback is, could you just define it for us?
So there's a clause in the contract for a restaurant or like a Top Chef, like the network, to buy back, for example, 10,000 copies of a cookbook, right? Some it's 2,000, some it's 3,000. And they were charging, maybe if someone was lucky, 60% off the retail. So the markup for the publisher was really high. And so I thought, well, what if I just pass off the printing cost and not mark it up to 60%? Instead, what I do is I just am very clear with the P&L of the cost of what it does to do a cookbook. And so in some way, I thought about that I would call it partnership. And so to say, hey, this is what it just costs. And would you like to retain more of your rights? Do you have another platform that you want to elevate? And I think it's really worked well. And I called Amy Treadwell because she is just so seasoned in cookbooks. Amy helped really actually from the very ground up raise this bar of what we were doing with our first cookbook, which was 52 Shabbats, and it was picked up by the New York Times. And it came to us because the author was in her own right a very, very good writer and columnist, but I think partly because of ageism and the way that traditional publishing has moved to social media platforms and other stuff, it was very hard for her to get published.
Right. So what I'm hearing, Angela, is that there are hybrid models within traditional publishing.
Correct. I don't think I'm doing anything different, actually. I just think I'm just saying to anybody out there, not just a brand or a restaurant, you could also have an opportunity to build your cookbook platform.
That's probably why. I mean, I remember like 15 years ago, 10 Speed and Chronicle did a lot more restaurant cookbooks. And there was probably because of that buyback. It's like, oh, we'll do this cookbook. The restaurant's already going to buy 4,000 copies. So that's guarantee out the door. We're going to sell 4,000 plus whatever. And then the restaurant had incentive to sell that to their customers at their restaurant. So they were also they were acting as retailers. So I guess I hadn't thought of it from the perspective of like, oh, what does that really mean for a traditional publisher to ask for that kind of buyback? But you're kind of flipping it and saying, okay, what if we just are really upfront with that idea of, how many copies is the author really going to be responsible for from the beginning?
Correct. And Kate, it's interesting because I was sort of challenged when I first started this company because everyone's like, what are you doing? Are you just trying to be vanity? And I said, actually, what I think the now it's big three almost, are doing is in somewhat vanity. I said, what I'm doing is actually elevating people who maybe have been writing and doing cookbooks and developing recipes for years and years and years, and we want really good content out there. And I sort of flipped that idea to them. I said, because a TikToker who's doesn't even have this background is getting a cookbook, how is that not vanity? And they sort of like step back and we're like, oh my gosh, you're right. So we have to also kind of think about if someone's paying in to elevate their platform, that isn't vanity. That what if they're with a publisher who's looking at it from a consumer perspective, a trade perspective, and saying that this actually is something that should be published and how it should be published.
Right. And vanity, I know when I got into it, Vanity Press was really kind of looked down upon. It's like you just self-publish your own book, pay for it and anybody can do it. There was this notion that the publishers knew they were the gatekeepers. Of course, that's not a notion, that was fact, but that a vanity press wasn't a serious book. So let's talk about, you started in 2020. What was your first list?
It was the fall of 2020 during the pandemic. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
So we postponed some of our higher lifestyle books, and we started with 3 books, which were 2 on parenting, because that was really, my background is sales, marketing, and business development. So I felt like we needed to address or have our list address what the current need was. And we also did something, blind spots on education, because a lot of people were home and needing that. Our first book, which Amy, you worked on, which was Parenting with Sanity and Joy, was a really good book and was actually picked up by Target. And we gave some exclusive images and rights to Real Simple magazine, and they ran it. So that actually also helped put our company on the map by creating something really useful during a pandemic that was also very giftable and easy and digestible. And Amy actually did the editorial on that book as well. Amy, you do other editorial than cookbooks.
I do pretty much anything, but as you guys know, cookbooks are my forte. I think I saw you announce the collective on LinkedIn, and I, at that time, had only fairly recently started freelancing. So I contacted Angela, and I was like, hey, you need any editors? And I swear you got back so fast. You're like, yes, we need an editor, like right now. And I've been working with them ever since.
How big is the team now?
Well, it's like a different level. So, I mean, I think our core team is like 5 among all the different aspects of the company. But as editorial director, I'm the one that hires all the freelancers. And, whether it's a copy editor or a developmental editor, we often do, and I think this is working out really well for us, is we do this sort of hybrid thing, which is a project editor / developmental editor. And I think really they function as an editor at a traditional publisher. So they'll go in early on and make sure the manuscript is ready with the author to go to copy edit. And then they also manage the whole book through the system. Because, of course, with 5 people in the office, there's too many books for us to really follow every little thing that's happening on the make side, the making of the book. So that has been working out really good. And fortunately, I think we have enough contacts in the industry that we can find these people who we already know are good at what they do.
And they do project work for you.
Exactly.
We've actually expanded to 8 people now. We hired in-house a junior designer recently. We've grown so much that we have an art director. She also comes from Weldon Owen and West Margin and has a lot of cookbook knowledge and full visual. And then we hired recently a junior designer because we were freelancing so much, but we were realizing how much we need, because making visual books is actually quite a lot of work. You not just need to make the book, but all of the visual assets that go with it nowadays, especially online. So that's a new addition. We also have a new publishing assistant. That's a new addition. And then myself. So there's actually 8 of us now.
Right.
So I'm really excited, and we continue to grow.
Tell us, what are some of the unique challenges in building out and creating a 4-color beautiful cookbook versus, say, other kinds of books?
Amy continually reminds me, Angela, it needs more time. So, Amy, if you want to talk a little bit about why that is the case, because I often am the salesperson, right, who's like, hey, can we get this done in a year? And Amy's like, no, we cannot.
Yeah, even back when I was at Chronicle, the cookbook schedules were always the longest. The same holds true here. It takes time to develop recipes, and these books are not written when they drop in our laps. They're mostly not done. A novel is usually almost done.
Right.
But cookbooks just take longer, and some need more editing than others, and some need more recipe testing than others. And then there's also just the writing level of you can have a really great idea and have really great recipes, but maybe you're not the best writer in the world and you need a little help. or more help than maybe other people need, or you're good at writing a recipe, but you're not so good at writing the head notes. I also think that just writing a recipe in and of itself in a way that can be easily followed can be nitpicky and difficult. And many authors, they'll write it out and they understand it. But maybe the audience doesn't understand it quite as well because they're leaving out words or they're not as clear as they could be. These are all things that I've just become used to over time, needing clarification or more instruction. And I think a lot of authors going in don't generally know that, or they overwrite or they underwrite.
A question for you, Amy. Working in the partnership model, do you feel your editor-author relationship is the same as it was in traditional publishing, or are there distinctions or differences in terms of how you work together? You're shaking your head.
Super good question. It's very different. I mean, a lot of the things, the nitty gritty of things is the same. You still have to do all the same kind of work. But in a partnership model, the author is investing their money in this project, and it's often much closer to them than somebody doing something in a more traditional sense. And so they feel more vested into it. You have to get their buy-in on every aspect. And they often demand that. So it can be kind of hard. Sometimes it's always a negotiation where you just need to sort of understand what the author wants and what they're like, their personalities are like even, so that you can just talk to them and be like, this is what I would like to do. Is that okay with you? Some people, you can just go in and say, I'm changing this because it doesn't work. And they'll be like, oh, you're the boss. Go ahead and do it. But I would say in this partnership model, there are fewer of those. There are more people who really are like, oh, why did you change that? And it takes more time and a lot more conversations, a lot more Zoom meetings. Yeah, that took me some time to get used to, which was fine. In the end, you have like this closer connection to them, which is really great in a number of ways. And eventually, sometimes you do have to be strong and convince them that I know you strongly believe that this is the way it should go, but it's actually incorrect. And you will get ripped to shreds in the press if you do this.
I just want to back up and really define the partnership model for anyone who's listening. What is a partnership publishing company?
We're very bespoke. In some way, I think I'm taking the best of traditional publishing and in some way reinventing a concept of, hey, we are traditional in many, many ways. There are some things we will, like, for example, in all of our contracts, I have the last say. Like, if they want to put some weird purple exploding eggplant on the front cover that makes no sense, we will say, we will make you that book. It will go to our custom. We won't put it in the trade. So we are not hybrid in that way. That's why I call it partnership. And there are many of our authors who we have people who do custom or they start in custom.
What's custom versus partner?
Custom would be you can have whatever you want. We make you a gorgeous book and we deliver it to you. You do not have distribution with Simon & Schuster.
You invest, you being the author. You make the book the client, the author wants, and then the author distributes.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So this is if someone, for example, wanted to self-publish, but they wanted our expertise they wanted to make sure the production quality was well done. They wanted to hire an indexer. They wanted to have a great cookbook designer. They would hire us to do that. What we do is partnership is we say, fine, we will do all of this, but you also have to be in conversation with Amy. You have to be in partnership with them. And there are some times where I have had noticed for some of our authors, they come up with such great ideas that we didn't see because they understand their platform, that Amy comes back to me and is like, I know we kind of thought this, but they were thinking this. And I'm like, that's fabulous. Let's run with that. So we are giving access into the conversation for our authors. We definitely have a lot more handholding. They have a lot more ability to go, hey, I want my cover a little bit differently. So we can experiment more with covers because they're paying for that. Where a traditional model is like, this is the P&L. I don't have any more money to pay out for this. So this is the cover the author is going to get. We don't treat it that way. We really figure out the best way for the ultimate end product, right? That is a partnership where I can come in and go, hey, this is an exploding eggplant is not going to work if you want to be in omnivore books. And they do. If you want to be in The Strand, or you want to go into Books Are Magic, like you want to have some really wonderful platforms and you want to be able to sell this cookbook, come to our team for that.
Let's talk about how an author gets into partnership with Collective Book Studio. How does it work over there?
So we get referrals, sometimes even from agents now. They might have a restaurant or a platform already. Often agents are realizing that like our model might actually be better for that type of platform because the buyback won't be as big. Their cost of goods will be our cost of goods. So they can make 8 times markup versus off the retail. So there's a lot of benefits. Amy, I think mostly referrals. How do you think people are finding us?
Especially now as the company has gained momentum, I think the press has brought more people to the table. And like any kind of submission process, the submissions can be anything. And they're not always a proposal. Sometimes it's an idea that maybe they couldn't get an agent, or like the agents who refer things to us. They think it's a good project, but they just don't think they can sell it to one of the bigger publishers.
And how many books do you do a year on the partnership side?
Well, I would love to do a lot more cookbooks. They are a lot of work and they're costly. So it's like finding the right company. In total, we do close to 25 to 30 titles per year. Half of that is children's, but I would love to grow our list. And so just so everyone's aware, yes, we do have the partnership model, about 60% of our business, but 40% I'm investing in those projects. So there are some in-house projects. We did this a really fun drink series, Friday night cocktails. Now it's tiki drinks. And so we are developing those in-house. Jen Newens is our writer there. What I offer is like, hey, if we want to develop something else, instead of a traditional advance, why don't I just offer a higher royalty and get people's platform and name out? So I do that as well. So I consider that partnership. So they might not be investing upfront in some of the creative, but I'm not forking out in advance. And that is actually allowing my company to stay healthy so that I can invest in the marketing and the production on those particular titles. So partnership is interesting, Molly. In some way, I don't know if you guys are familiar with foreign rights deals, like foreign rights publishing. In some way, look at what I do as like a licensing agreement that foreign rights agents do. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to sell my rights to a publisher and basically maybe even they'll own it 75 years after I die. This way, I'm almost like we're in partnership and I'm licensing a portion of this cookbook for a certain period of time. And depending on how much I own, so depending on if I own the inventory, if I don't own the inventory, the term will vary on how long I've licensed the rights.
I think that's a good thing to bring up, Angela, and I think you should talk a little bit about this, which is that they also own the art, they own the design, and that's something that trade publishing does not do. And because of that, I do think it attracts companies who are using a book as something beyond just a part of their brand. And that helps too. It's really hard to make money or a living, let's say, on a cookbook.
Right.
So if you have something more that you're doing, then your cookbook is just part of that. And then you can use all those assets in your advertising, on your website.
If you own them all.
Right.
Right.
You've used the term investing a lot. A lot of our listeners are first-time authors and just trying to get an understanding of ballpark. If I wanted to write a cookbook, I had a great idea. I've got somewhat of a platform or a lane that I'm confident in. What am I investing?
It can vary a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I would say $50,000 is your minimum for a really good cookbook, and $100,000 is very common. It depends so much on the photography, which is a huge part of the reason it's very hard to get published now, right?
Right.
And the photography can really vary. We've done some really interesting ideas lately. Heartland Masala is one. We did illustrations and photography as a mix. 52 Shabbats, which I talked about, we had a very limited photography budget that worked. And then you're right, Amy, Faith owns all that photography and she's been able to use it across her platform. I know that she has been able to actually got paid to develop and write a arugula recipe, I think, for Food and Wine magazine. So it's given her a different platform. The cookbook has given, this authority to somebody and get paid in other ways, Molly. So I think the investment for me is if you feel that $50,000 is something that you can recoup in other ways besides cookbook sales, then we are absolutely a really good partnership model for you. If that is something that you don't know how you're going to recoup, and like you're not doing cookbook writing in other ways, doing cookbook classes, Heartland Masala, they're doing classes, then it's actually much trickier to make your money back.
When it comes to just the cost breakdown of, say, that $50K, how much is printing and distribution?
So I take on all the distribution expense. That is partly why when you go into the trade with the idea that we split royalties, right? So I'm invested, hence partnership model, all of the back end and all the marketing and all of this stuff with my staff. We're on 2 cookbook stages, for example, at American Library Association on the What's Cooking stage. Like all of that is the idea that the New York Public Library is going to pick up my cookbook at the new fall cookbook called Bowl Theory and put it in every one of their libraries, right? So I'm invested as part of that partnership and in the distribution piece when they go on the trade. Hence why it's so important they listen to Amy, make these changes, because I'm actually investing in the outcome and the risk.
And the custom model is the one where you Collective don't make that investment. We'll provide all these services, editorial, design, this and that, but we're not taking over distribution and supporting the promotion.
Correct. You're not going to get pitched for American Library Association stage,
right?
Or ABA. We're not going to, have it distributed at Omnivore Books in San Francisco, right?
When did you create that partnership with Simon & Schuster to be able to be distributed through them? For people who maybe don't realize how important distribution is, explain a little bit more about why it's so important.
So we've been with Simon & Schuster for 3 years. It's so nuanced distribution, and it's what I come from in Chronicle Books. I was actually there when we moved our warehouse from Nevada, and went to Hachette, or I was at 10 Speed Press when literally our warehouse was in Berkeley, right?
Wow.
Like before it was bought by Random House. So distribution is really different even now than when I started in publishing. It's consolidated, just like the big 5. So the move to Simon & Schuster, I was with an independent distribution company prior to that, really is the way to go when you are thinking about needing to expand your books into an anthropology or a Williams Sonoma or a Sur La Table, a Nordstrom's, World Market Cost Plus. We've actually been in all of those stores, our books. You need a larger distributor and you need a massive sales team in order to accomplish that reach. You also have to look at it from the account perspective. So if you are a big company like Anthropologie or Williams Sonoma, think about where they want to pay their bills and streamline accounting. They don't want a bunch of people all over country. So to be with Simon & Schuster, you know, they're going to have a bill with the Collective Book Studios cookbook, as well as another maybe big named author that Simon & Schuster is carrying. And so it's a lot more streamlined for the account, the national account itself. So I think it's a game changer. Amy, I mean, do you want to speak at all from an editorial perspective?
I do think that when it's a big selling point on our end to say that our books are distributed by Simon & Schuster, everybody knows who they are, and that they have a huge reach. It makes it, I think, easier for us to acquire new projects. And it's like maybe Simon & Schuster doesn't want to acquire my book, but we do, and Simon & Schuster sells it anyway. So, I mean, in the end, it works out for everybody. So I do like how that works, and has been working, I think, very well for us. And I do think, too, it's interesting that I'm kind of just learning about as well, which is we also have to then negotiate with Simon & Schuster with what we're putting out there, because they have to think that they can sell it, not just us. So it does mean that in some times that we have to collaborate with them a little bit. You know, we put something out and the cover maybe isn't quite right in their opinion. And then we have to go back and be like, okay, what do we do now? It's just a lot more people with a lot of expertise. In the end, we're all in there for the same reason, which is to sell the book. We all have a vested interest to make it work.
Does that mean you also are participating in, say, those sales conferences calls or those big sales meetings where you're pitching all your titles for that season? And
yes. So I come from, like I said, sales. I think a lot of people come to us because of that. And the editorial. It's both, because what I want everyone who's listening on this podcast to understand is you could go to an indie publishing house and get your cookbook, and your advance will be really low and maybe didn't invest. However, if the editorial is not there, also, if there's not an expert looking at it from a cookbook eye, I would say that's a question to ask that small press. Like, who is the editor on it? Because what I have noticed working with Amy is that you immediately can look at a manuscript and tell me, okay, these are the questions that we have to ask this author. I think that is really key. And this, I'm talking about a cookbook author. These are the key thing. And so if the author is going into a company and they're not being asked those questions that Amy was sort of saying, like, how are the head notes? That recipe, that word makes sense to you, but doesn't make sense to me. How can we explore that? That's doing a disservice to the end product, which means that there will be less sales. That's just the reality. Like the reason the words we're winning, the reason Simon keeps asking us to do more cookbooks is that they're beautiful and they're also well written, they're well organized, hence they're selling. Our cookbooks are backlisting.
That's the beauty.
I think there's a notion, say you're a mid-list author, or you don't have a great platform, you can't get the interest of the big five, the big three, whatever we call them, and you have resources, so you're going to go to a partnership model. Or you can't get an agent who's interested. But I'm hearing you, it's as competitive for you to sign an author or to collaborate with an author. You're not just going to sign an author because... So I guess I'm asking about the vetting process. Like, it's not because you can't get published elsewhere that you'll come to Collective. It's just a different way to get published.
I love that, Molly. Amy, want to speak to that? Because you're very critical. And Elizabeth, who's not here, my associate publisher, she comes from a literary agency. And often, she just refuses stuff. She doesn't even let it come by my desk, because she's like, I don't even want Angela to start asking the questions because this is not going to get published. So Amy, do you want to speak to this?
Well, Elizabeth is the acquisitions editor when it really comes down to it. And some things are easy. They come across and you're like, oh, this is wonderful. What does everybody else think? And we're like, yeah, let's sign it on. But then there are some that she's like, I think there's something here. Amy, please take a look at this. And I'm sort of the second person, and especially when it comes to cookbooks. Yeah, they come in at different levels of completeness. What I have constantly been pushing back on is vision. I would say that that's the thing that potential authors seem to forget or don't realize they need to have. It's they jump forward and I know I want to do a book on this subject and I know all about it and this is great. And they're not necessarily wrong, but I do think that every author can benefit from just knowing the vision of the project before they even send it to us. And some are very strong in that respect. Heartland Masala, they knew exactly what they wanted and how this was going to be put out, and they did all the upfront work on it. And that's great. But sometimes they come in without that, but we see a kernel of something there. And so we're like, okay, do we think we can make something out of this? And we've done that with actually a lot of books where they have sort of a kernel of what they're wanting. And then we kind of push back and we're like, okay, you need to answer the big questions, which is, what is this? Who is it for? And what are they going to get out of it? That's the big thing I seem to go back with all the time, is to make them clarify that. And so we'll often go back to the author and say, can you give us more information about this? Give us your vision. You told us you could do 100 recipes on zucchini, but you haven't really shown us a recipe for zucchini. So then we ask for samples, we ask for more information, and then we decide whether we think we can go forward on this or not. And of course, it makes a difference. You know, the more work a cookbook is going to need, the cost of it just goes up. All the steps down the line will end up being a little bit more expensive. But in the end, if it's a great book, it'll be worth all of that.
And we've noticed that authors tend, if they want to work with us, that's what they're looking for, right? They're going to come back. So we might go, hey, it's not ready yet. Can you go back and do these things? Come back to us. Or they might say, hey, we don't know how to do that. We want to spend more money. And so Amy will work on, do we need to hire a writer? Do we need to spend more money on a developmental editor? So some of our authors, actually, that they're okay with that. The biggest sticking point is the photography that I've noticed, is that there are some cookbook people that will submit and go, I want my photography, no negotiation. And that's where we're like, pass. Really what has to happen is we just can't have slop on a plate, right? Amy, you often say that looks like slop on a plate.
Yeah. And, you know, we evaluate whatever they submit in terms of photography. And actually, we run it by the art director and say, what do you think? Is this good enough or not? And we will make the suggestion either for them to reshoot things, because we've had several authors that have shot their own stuff. And it's been a lot of back and forth. But in the end, I think it's looked beautiful. Nosh, for instance, the author shot all those photographs. It's beautiful.
A lot of our authors, if they want to do the photography, they also know that we're going to be part of that sort of vision with them. And I think they're really open to it.
I'm hearing there's just so much back and forth in terms of making this book in partnership with the author. I'm imagining that dollar figure gets negotiated during these conversations and in many cases changes. Is all that money due at once, or is it paid out, just kind of the reverse of an advance?
Correct.
And then my second question is the royalty, it's a 50-50 no matter what the initial investment.
Oh, that's a great question, Molly. So yes, it's 50-50 on the print in the initial investment. The distribution costs are fixed and they're high and the staff is high. So that, I know some do 60-40 in hybrid, but that's not what we do. I do negotiate. There is higher royalties, like for authors that go out and find hotels and spas and cool things that they can sell to. They make much higher royalties on that. That's where it can go to 55 and 60. Ebooks, licensing, sub-licensing, those places I'm more negotiable on those ends, which is nice. Reprints I often invest in. We have scales and how much I invest in their reprint their royalty goes down? Am I investing and are they paying their reprints off their royalties versus having to reinvest? So there's a lot of worry often. And so I have a clause that every author loves, which is we can elect for their royalty rate to go down and I invest in a reprint. So that is something I do. In terms of the creative fee, it's a third down upon signing and then a third when the manuscript is in, and that can take a year or it can take 2 months. Like it really varies from cookbook to cookbook. So I definitely don't want an author to feel they have to pay or even 50% of a creative fee when they are working. So that third is really focused on editorial and then securing a designer for prelims and a cover, because don't forget, we are working from a trade perspective with those big sales meetings. So we have to work at least a year out on that front to be able to have success in the marketplace.
Do you file copyright for authors?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about what an author would need to present to you to get into the partnership.
If you don't have a proposal, on the website, there's a whole form to fill out, which asks lots of questions, as well as places where you can, upload your recipes or upload your proposal or samples or photographs, whatever it is that you want to show us. And all that can go right through the sort of portal of our website. So you don't have to have a formal proposal. I think it helps because then you're covering all the bases. And to be honest with you, I think that form, if you compiled all those things together, you'd have a pretty rudimentary proposal anyway.
If I had an agent that was trying to shop my book, became interested in Collective, how does that work? Fire my agent?
I don't know.
That's actually a good question, because I think with Heartland Masala, didn't they have like an informational interview with Sally Eckes, and she suggested they reach out to you? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Sally's phenomenal. She really loves our platform because she's a brilliant agent. She does discovery calls. I think more agents should do that.
Right.
I don't charge for our submissions. I want to say this to every listener. If you have a hybrid or partnership that you're interested and you're going to have to invest, you should not have to pay to have them read your submission. That I'm very clear on. However, if you are investing like Sally and have a discovery call and need someone to do some work for you or that kind of expert, then absolutely paid for their time or whatever. And then in that call, the agent might go, hey, the Collective Book Studio is actually a way to go. So we're going to go, hey, this came in and I actually really love seeing some type of writing, whether that's a recipe. Well, definitely if it's a cookbook, come on, we got to see you write a recipe.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not going to write it for you unless you want us to hire a ghostwriter, in which case we're happy to do so.
Right.
I love seeing a table of contents. I really do. This is really what my vision is, my table of contents, a sample recipe. Have I thought about my introduction, what I may want to write about? Those things are very important to me, as well as obviously their bio, their experience. But it's not the cool part. It's not all your platform. It's like, how well is your concept thought out?
Right. And it's so important because I have seen things come in which are all about how they're going to promote it. And, here are all my contacts and this is my platform and the whole business. I'm like, that's really great, but where's the book?
Right.
Because we still need to make a book. You haven't shown me what this book is or what it's about or anything.
The term platform is such an important buzzy term in the publishing industry now, because it's so hard for readers to discover new books. And how do they discover new books? Well, maybe this person has a platform and they get the word out about their book. Now it seems with a lot of traditional publishing deals for cookbooks, the person already has to have this big platform even to get their foot in the door to be considered for a book deal. I'm wondering for both of you how you see the cookbook world evolving. And on the other side, like how important is platform for your authors?
So they have to at least be willing to build it. Like that is really important to me. Like if an author came in and is like, I just want you guys to publish a cookbook, but then I'm going to crawl in my cave and not talk about it, we'll say we can do that for you custom. Like the fact is, you need to be able to be an author, and it's really hard. So that could be a Substack, that we develop a Substack. Heartland Masala, he didn't want to do Instagram. Okay, no problem. His Substack was amazing, right? And we all followed it and fell in love with it. We printed 7,500 copies and we ran out before Christmas, okay?
Wow.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was not Instagram. That was traditional media. It definitely was picked up. Tons of podcasts, tons of work. Going out there on the road.
So many events. And actually, Oyen's in a band called Darling Side.
Right.
And they sell the book at all their shows.
Yes. I mean, Amazing, right? So I think if an author is willing to do the work, we are a really great platform. You know, my attitude is, I'm going to cheer you on and ring a bell. You get an agent. You get a 6-figure deal on that next book. Phenomenal. My company did its job. Got you that next book. We don't have it in any of our contracts that you have to come to us for your second book.
No option clause.
No option clause. So if I can help build an author, that's also really important to me. And I have done that.
Things you would never, ever expect.
You would never think about. And so as authors who are listening, think about your network. And would this help you kind of elevate sort of other work you want to do?
Given that a lot of our listeners are authors, is there anything we should have asked either of you, Angel or Amy, that we didn't?
Yes, I have a question for Amy.
Okay.
I would love to know, like, if you could edit something, if you wanted something on the list in the third tier, what are you looking for?
Oh, what am I looking for?
Yeah.
You know, I probably what everybody else is looking for. And what I'm seeing so much of out in the world is books with a story. You know, you want that interesting background. Take Heartland Masala, for example, again. That mother-son dynamic was super interesting. And not only that, like the mom is the one that did all the recipes, and Oyen is the one that wrote all the little historical vignettes. And so you learn so much about all of it, and yet you still have that wonderful little personal thing where Oyen will be like, oh my God, my mother hated me when I made this, or, you know, and it's funny, and you just feel closer to them because of that. And it's so funny how that has changed over time. I mean, when I think about when I started doing cookbooks, I mean, it was in the single subject world when you could do a single subject cookbook on just about anything. You know, that all shifted to the internet and you can get all the recipes you want. But the reason people buy cookbooks is because they get more than a recipe. They get somebody's story, they learn something about something they didn't know anything about, and get to eat really interesting, good food they never heard about as well.
I love that. The story is really important.
Amazing.
Good words to end on.
Can't thank you both enough. You've given us and our listeners so much information, so much to think about. Really, thank you.
Thanks. It was fun.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. For more about each episode, subscribe to our newsletter at everythingcookbooks.substack.com. There are also other ways you can support the show. You can go to our website and check out our totes, t-shirts, sweatshirts, other merch. You can also just buy us coffee. We love a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Thank you, as always, to our editor, Abby Circatella. And until next time, keep on writing, reading, and cooking.